Thanks, Chair. Good morning, Minister. Minister, I want to ask you about your intentions through the Critical Infrastructure Bill, and particularly Section 7, in terms of the removal of the climate duty, a duty on all public bodies for them to assess the climate impact of their infrastructure projects they're advancing.
Deputy, and I propose to take parliamentary questions 11 and 17 together. The Critical Infrastructure Bill is a central pillar of the Government's broader infrastructure acceleration agenda. The need for a bill to fast-track a limited number of strategically important projects through approval processes was identified in the report and action plan published last December. The bill has been drafted and introduced on a priority basis. Its primary aim is to allow Government to designate certain projects or programmes as critical. This then requires all public bodies who may have an authorisation function for these projects or programmes to prioritise consideration of them within their approval processes. In practical terms, this means that relevant bodies will be required to prioritise, avoid delay, reduce timelines, parallel processes and cooperate to fast-track designated infrastructure. And I propose to disapply Section 15 of the Climate Act because the risk that this section gives rise to. The provisions in Section 15 of the Climate Act have opened up a new channel for the judicial review of the decisions of public bodies, and the net effect is that it could slow the pace of infrastructure development. Delays to infrastructure rollout are, in my view, a key reason why we are not reaching much of our climate and renewable energy targets. The report by Mario Draghi on the EU competitiveness, for example, specifically identified Ireland as having the slowest approval process across the EU for renewable electricity. Designated projects or programmes will still have all relevant climate considerations built into their development. Every Exchequer-funded project, for example, is already required to measure and price their greenhouse gas emissions under the infrastructure guidelines. Under the bill as drafted, climate and environmental obligations will still fully apply, and that's important to state because that isn't being reflected in what you've said so far. And disapplication of Section 15 simply removes an unnecessary layer that risks driving judicial reviews, and we need to remove all risks around judicial reviews in the legislative framework when it comes to infrastructure delivery. And Ireland will still be bound by climate and renewable energy targets, and that's part of our wider work to transition to a climate-resilient, biodiversity-rich and sustainable climate-neutral economy by 2050. All that will change in practical terms is the ability to challenge decisions of public bodies as they relate to how they have considered the impact of an individual project or programme against that particular section of legislation.
Thanks, Minister. Well, Mario Draghi may have rightfully highlighted real challenges in our planning system, but I don't think he placed the blame on the Climate Action Act or Section 15. And I suppose, as I spoke in the Chamber on Tuesday, we are talking in a context where, as a government, the previous government signed up to legally binding international and European targets. Your minister, your colleague, announced over Christmas we're not going to reach those targets. The Climate Act was absolutely central in terms of our ability as a state to reach those targets, and now your government have been systematically trying to take out one of the central elements, the climate duty, in under Section 15. And it has been systematic. It's seen in this piece of legislation, it's seen in the airport cap, and it's seen in the Strategic Gas Bill. I asked you to name the judicial review cases taken on the basis of Section 15. Can you name cases that have been taken on the basis of Section 15?
Minister.
So I've read judgments that relate to Section 15, and some of them do have a chilling effect on infrastructure delivery. And if you take the, I'm not going to set out the judgment here, I don't have it in front of me, but I would have concern with the interpretation of Section 15 as it relates to the infrastructure system presents a risk in overall delivery. And there have been extensive and a number of judgments relating to Section 15 which presents risks. I need to be clear about that. And I'm just saying the deference to creating a legal avenue and risk to infrastructure delivery relating to Section 15 has to be addressed in the context of delivery. And we've already had, just as an example last week, and I just take it as the most recent example, where we had a permission validly given by an Commission Pleanála relating to the Ring Road in Galway, and we already have a particular NGO saying they are considering a case under Section 15 for that particular infrastructure project. It's already gone through all the statutory processes, it's already gone to Commission Pleanála, and the growth and the deference and the risk that of all of these projects ending up in the courts brings a risk to infrastructure delivery. There are a whole other extensive area of reforms which we're doing, and we're trying to make it more efficient. But a lot of what we're trying to do here actually relates to building a low-carbon economy in terms of our grid, which has to be developed, many of our transport projects, which are actually in public transport, as I've said, and we want to de-risk appeals that are taken through judicial reviews. This is one element of it. Others are related to the work that Minister O'Callaghan is doing, and Minister O'Brien as well, around environmental legal fees as well. So if the judgment that was set out and the test that's given around that judgment presents risk,
Minister.
And that's why we're seeking to discipline.
Deputy.
Minister, you continually put the blame for judicial reviews on environmentalists, on people who are concerned about climate action. But let me cite 3 actual judicial review cases, not hypothetical ones that you continue to cite, but actual cases that took place on 3 major public transport projects. So there was the judicial review on Dart West in our own constituency, taken by a landowner. The judicial review on the Bus Connects project to Blanchardstown in our own constituency, taken by a landowner. The judicial review taken against Finglas Lewis, again taken by a landowner. And in each of those cases, Section 15 of the Climate Act, which you want to disapply, would actually have strengthened the case of the NTA, the state agency looking to take the particular project, just as Section 15 strengthened the case of An Bord Pleanála in Coolglass case. So, Minister, I think you're getting this wrong. You're not looking at the implication of what you're going to do. Read Coolglass and understand that you are weakening the state's hand in defending judicial review cases on major projects that will actually help reduce our carbon emissions.
Minister.
I'm against all judicial reviews, whether it's environmentalists, landowners or anybody in the economy, that when a decision is made by a Commission Pleanála, we need to allow it to be built and respect it. We have seen the enormous deference to allowing this system and this industry to build up of judicial reviews is undermining delivery systems right across the board. I'm against landowners taking judicial reviews, I'm against developers taking judicial reviews, I'm against anybody taking judicial reviews. When I respect the statutory process and appeal systems that we have. And what we're trying to do here is remove and a risk and of a particular legal avenue which is there. And that's what I'm saying. So I have a similar view on this across anybody who wants to take a judicial review. I just gave the example last week because it happens to reference Section 15 relating to an infrastructure project which we want to deliver as a government. And I've read the judgment, and it sets out a particular test for relating to individual projects which presents risks. And I'm saying that public bodies should and they do make climate assessed projects that's set out in the infrastructure guidelines, and we need to ensure that that continues, and there's no change to that in the context of publicly funded projects. What I'm saying is we should allow public bodies to do that, adhere to the infrastructure guidelines. They already set that out in a transparent way and do it properly. But what we shouldn't do is at the end of all of that, when a particular project has received permission, that we present a legal risk to that project being delayed for 2 or 3 years. And that is something that I think all of us need to address in the context of reform. And I think Section 15 brings that risk in terms of overall delivery. So to your point, I get frustrated with anybody taking a judicial review, to be frank, on any project that we want to deliver, and we share the same views around ensuring Dart West can advance and many of the other public transport projects as well.